Consider the story of Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is a hard-working, ambitious man. He doesn't mind working, and he doesn't mind putting in an honest day's labor. And he decides to go to work for himself, to start his own business. And he wants to sell bread. In time, Mr. Jones builds a rather large and successful factory selling bread. This bread is good. People like it. They buy it. He has a competitor on the other side of town called the Smith Bakery. And he wants to gain market share. He wants to sell his bread to the people in town. So here's what he does, being so devious and clever. He hires Guido. Smith is the bad guy and Jones is the good guy. And Guido is knocking on the door of Mr. Jones with his hat in his hand, saying, "Can you please help me? I need a job. I want to go to work in your factory." Mr. Jones says, "Yeah, I need somebody to mix dough. Can you mix dough?" And Guido says, I can sure learn. Give me a few days and I'll be the best dough mixer you've ever seen." "Okay, you got the job. Show up Monday." Guido, in time it becomes apparent that Guido is really not a very good worker, but he's somewhat popular among the other workers. And he does a lot of talking to the other workers. He spends a lot of time communicating with the other workers. And one day, Guido and several other of your workers show up at your office door. You're now Mr. Jones. You are Mr. Jones. I've been talking about you all along, you and your bread factory. And Guido comes to your door saying, "We demand a raise." And it begins to dawn on you that Guido is actually a union organizer. And he says, if you don't give us a raise, we're going on strike. Next week, we're not going to make any bread. You'll have no bread to sell. Your profits will be hurt, and you will probably lose market share to the Smith Bakery, because people are not that loyal to your product that when push comes to shove, they'll buy bread from Smith. And like a fool, you give in. So now every time you want to make a decision involving your employees, you have to deal with Guido. And you don't know yet that actually it's Smith that hired Guido. That Guido is actually working for your competitor. Your competitor has weaseled into your business through subversion and partially taken control of your business. Mr. Smith, your competitor, who hired Guido, the union organizer, is putting into the heads of your employees that we need to solve some obscure crisis in town. We have an obscure crisis, and it's somehow, he says, related to bread. And the only solution to this crisis, this weird crisis, it doesn't matter what it is. The weirder you can think of, the better. The only solution to this crisis is to allow Smith to buy partial control of your business. He puts that into the heads of your employees, and now your employees are threatening to go on strike if you, Mr. Jones, don't address this crisis by surrendering more ownership of your business to Smith. And you're beginning to catch on what's going on now, but your employees don't. They don't know they're being manipulated. They don't know that this is an example of economic warfare. This is not really capitalism. This is really crime. Businesses compete that's a fact of life. But competition is not capitalism. Capitalism is the private ownership, private control of the means of production. Your freedom to amass, to build, to create a factory that makes bread. Part of that freedom involves your protecting your capital from competition, from subversion. Maurice Strong is advocating that Ford and Chrysler and General Motors turn over more control of their business to their competitors, the Chinese. If the truth was known, it would become obvious that the Chinese have organized those unions that caused Ford and Chrysler and General Motors to become less competitive, to produce products, not bread this time, but automobiles, that are overpriced. Smith can produce cheaper bread with almost the same quality as your bread, which is now costing you too much. And because of a crisis, in this case the weird crisis is global warming, carbon emissions, your employees think that it'd be good if the competitors, the Chinese, in this case, no longer Smith, but now we realize that we're actually talking about General Motors versus the makers of an obscure little piece of CRAP called a Chery, Chery. And this Chery automobile is promoted by Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong wrote an article that it sounds just as crazy as the story I just told you about the bread. He's saying, if you read his article, you realize he's saying because of global warming, Detroit, meaning Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, should turn over ownership of their capital, their factories, the things that they own that produces the cars, whatever that may be, even intangibles such as reputation and brand name, to the Chinese in order to combat global warming. Well, first of all, you know, nobody's proved that global warming is man-made. I don't believe it is, and I can back that up. And secondly, how in the world is it going to affect carbon emissions by turning over control, ownership of General Motors and Ford and Chrysler to the Chinese? You see, this is all this is economic subversion. Maurice Strong stands revealed as a con artist. A con artist. The only other explanation for the gobbledygook in his article is that he is suffering from dementia.